much. My apologies for doing this presentation in English. But it's a real pleasure to share some of our work with you today. I will talk about the results from our latest PISA assessment and effort, where we try to compare not how many students sit in classrooms, but the quality of learning outcomes that are being achieved. But I also want to share with you some of the lessons that we have learned about how education systems improve around the world. Before I do that, I will speak briefly about the context of PISA, how PISA works. We started in the late 90s with the industrialized world, the OECD countries, to develop the framework. But since then, more and more countries have joined the assessment, so that today we have a very, very good picture of the knowledge and skills that are provided by education systems. China and India is still patchy in the picture, but we're improving on that as well. Basically, in 2009, we assessed about 500,000 students around the world on their key skills. And one thing that is important is that PISA is not so much concerned with whether students can repeat what they have learned in school. But we're looking at whether students are able to extrapolate from what they know and to apply their knowledge in novel situations, situations they have not seen before. That's a big challenge for many students, also for many Mexican students. Some people even say that's unfair. You can't test students on the basis of tasks they haven't seen before. But if you take that argument, life is unfair. Because life asks us every day to engage in new and unforeseen challenges. And we want to know how well prepared young people are for this. We also collect data on the social background from which students come. Because students from rich and poor families face quite different challenges. We also collect data from parents, teachers, school principals, and system leaders to tell us about the context under which education outcomes are achieved in different countries. That, in a nutshell, is the PISA program. It's a test of students' capacities, but also an instrument that helps us to identify strengths and weaknesses of education systems and learn from other education systems. You can, of course, always ask, is it relevant to compare Mexico with the United States or Japan or any other country that operate in very different conditions? It's probably not actually fair to do so, but it's still relevant because Mexico works in a global economy. Mexico needs to look up to the systems that will produce the most competitive results in education today. And this is true for every country in the world. It's also true in your own country. If you think about students from rich and poor families, you could basically say, it's unfair to a student from a poor family to be confronted with a demanding educational standard. But the worst thing you can do is to lower the standard for a student from a disadvantaged family. Because once they graduate from school, they're going to face the same reality, the same labor market, the same jobs that students from other families will face. It is maybe not fair, but really important to look at results. And that's what I want to do with you today. The first thing is actually a good news. We have seen quite significant improvements in learning outcomes in Mexico since we began the assessment. You can see that here. The first improvement is very important. More students in Mexico are now going to school at age 15. In the year 2000, only about half of the 15-year-olds were in school. Now it's 65%. More students accessible. The even better news is that this has not led to a deterioration of standards, but you actually can see that, for example, in literacy, after a decline since 2003, results seems to be moving upwards. In mathematics, where we started measurement in 2003, things are moving upwards. When you build an average, things are moving upwards. And actually, we only know up to the year 2009, but if you look at this projection, you can actually estimate that Mexico is likely to achieve its performance target that it has set itself in 2006. Now, that's one part of looking at the results. Actually, last night, someone said to me, you know, there must be something wrong with these results because it's impossible for the Mexican education system to improve. You know? Something suspicious to me. But actually, I tell you, these results are robust, they're reliable, they're moving upward. Mexico is improving. But the second question you need to ask yourself is this improvement enough to catch up with the industrial world? And when you actually do that, you will see that there is a long way for Mexico to go to become internationally competitive. You can see that when you actually line up the performance of countries internationally. The green area are the countries that do well by OECD standards, yellow is so-so, and red are the countries that are clearly below OECD standards. And you can see Mexico is still quite low. I'm not showing you the very low performing countries, you know, Mexico should be looking upwards, backwards. Mexico's performance target for 2012 also is still only moderately ambitious. If you think about where the world is going. And the world is not standing still. We see, and you'll see that in a moment, some of the best performing education systems are not resting on their achievements, but actually continue to move forward. Who's on top? Shanghai in China. A very mixed province, rich and poor areas. And now you tell me, well, this is all about culture. You know, these Chinese have something that nobody else can do. I hope by the end of my presentation you will see that this actually has to do with public policy, what they've done. And not every Chinese-speaking country is doing well. That's also important. You see Chinese Taipei or Macau just doing average. Culture is no guarantee for success. You see the same in North America. Canada is doing well. The United States is doing so-so. And Europe, Finland is doing really well. Many other European countries are doing so-so. This is not about geography. This is not even about wealth. This is a lot what countries have done with their assets. I want to introduce a second dimension into this, and that's the dimension of equity. How well do countries succeed to close the gap between winners and losers? The influence of social background and the success of young people, which is very, very important today, because in the past, education just needed to produce a few well-educated people. Today, education or societies need everyone. And you actually see that some countries do that really well, and some countries the gap between socioeconomic groups is very small. If you look at this diagram, everybody wants to be there, but performance is strong and the gap between disadvantaged and advantaged families and students is very small. Nobody wants to be there, but performance is low and there are large disparities. But in education policy, for a long time, people have debated whether it's better to be here where performance is good, but at the price of large disparities, or whether one should focus on equity and just accept mediocrity. You know, the idea that you have to make a choice between quality and equity was a very, very important one in education policy. Unfortunately, it still is. Actually, if you look at the results, you can see that there are a number of countries in this green quadrant, a number of countries that achieve high levels of performance and an equitable distribution of results. Quality and equity can both be achieved by countries in different countries. Some countries have started to do PISA already in the year 2000 and are now giving them one of these colorful smarties here. And I make it a bit more complicated. The size of the Smartie tells you how much money is being spent per student. The larger the dot, the more money is being spent for each student. The smaller the dot, the cheaper the education. If money would be a guarantee for success, you know, the more money you spend, the better your outcomes. You would find all the big bubbles on top of the chart and all the small ones at the bottom. But that's not what you see. You see some countries with moderate resources doing really well, and some countries with a lot of money not achieving that well. Very important. Money is necessary, but not a guarantee for success. How you spend your money is the key to success.